Good morning. Welcome to the Path of Wildness meditation for June 8th, 2016. The Path of Wildness is a walk of equanimity, a balanced movement through life, operating towards 3 objectives and 7 principles. The 3 objectives are the development of sound principles. The second objective is the exercise of good emotional reactions to what happens in life. And the third objective is to perform good actions. Now the definition of good will be met with in just a bit as I get through the principles. The 7 principles are as follows. The first is the atomic principle. The universe consists of bits and pieces, atoms that are changing and flowing and transforming into one thing after another. Compounds formed of molecules, formed of atoms, formed of subatomic particles, which are themselves little bits of frozen energy. And everything around us is in change, including ourselves. So if you have an inclination or an aspiration, you best perform it now, while your literal constitution, is in such a state as to allow it. The next principle is the principle of nature. This is an observation that everything has a particular nature but being a quality or qualities that define it and lay out the framework by which it operates best and can be most fruitful and successful. Individuals have their own nature as well as species and different forms, inanimate objects as well. The nature of humans is to use our primary adaptive capability, which is this big brain of ours, to solve problems and to come up with solutions, mechanisms and solutions that make our lives better and improve the world around us. So we're problem-solving animals, thinking animals. It's also true that individuals have nature, and it's a good exercise of time in your life to figure out what your nature is and then to live according to it. I've determined that my nature is to walk and to think in wild places, preferably in solitude. And when I do so, the best bounty and fruit of life then follows. The next principle is the principle of social principle. Humans are social animals. We need one another. It's in our best interest and in the interest of our species if we apply ourselves towards social ends. In that regard, having a job or exercising some capacity, some capability that you have, using your nature for the improvement of others, of the society around us, is going to yield the greatest amount of virtue. And I'll get to virtue as the last principle. The next principle is the principle of temperance, which is the controlled, exercising control of consumption. So neither too much nor too little. You can go either way with excess. have too little. I guess that's an excess, too little. So you don't want to eat too much, drink too much, play too much, work too much, exercise too much. I don't know, think too much, maybe. All of these things are something of a distraction to our best living, and also tend to muddy the waters, and also are nothing more than consumption. Consumption is just the exhausting of energy, of resources, and it's good for us to preserve resources whenever possible, especially towards the social ends. So if you can control your consumption, you are making the world a better place by virtue of the fact of conserving resources that can be dispersed to others who need them. But you're also performing a great virtue in the act of restraint, in the performance, not just the imagining of the willpower, but the exercise of willpower, which is an incredible virtue in its own right. So even if you're not socially minded and you're not going to you don't want to preserve resources, and even if the resources aren't something that anybody else needs, maybe they're maybe some vice, still, by exercising restraint, you are becoming stronger. So that's the principle of not abstinence, but of temperance. The next principle is the principle of the great indifference, which is the fact that the universe doesn't seem to give a damn. We look out and we see just the howling wild. We're lucky if it even howls. Just the wildness, as I call it. And we realize that we're all alone out here. We just have one another, just you and me. And maybe our dogs, cats, and fish, and squirrels, and snakes, our pets. So keep in mind that we're all alone. We just have one another. There is no overseeing master God, or no evidence. At least if there is one, they don't show themselves in any way, not revealed in any way. Those who say that they do know God are typically appear to be knowing nothing more than a voice inside their head. At least they can't demonstrate that as anything more. And anyone that claims the requirement of faith to know God has lost the argument already, because that is the giving up of any hope to provide objective truth, and simply appealing to an inner wish for something to be true. That's all that faith is. Faith is the excuse that we use to believe things that we can't show are true otherwise. So well, that's a long ways towards moving away from the great indifference. But that's okay, because that's a centerpiece to the whole darn Path of Wildness. The next principle is the principle of reason. Now we're up to 6. Reason is the governing faculty. When I talk about faith, faith is nothing. Faith is giving up. Faith is resigning yourself to pursuing what you want in spite of what you don't know, or in spite of what you know. It's just it's a childish, and I apologize if I sounded condescending, but I believe it is a childish way of saying it. Just, I want it to be true, so I'm going to tell myself it's true. Whereas reason, on the other hand, requires us to look to square front and center upon reality, to look at reality and to measure reality, to hold it against a standard of logic, to look at the conclusions and predictions that it makes, and then to weigh if those are true. So with reason, we start with the facts that we observe through the universe, looking around and measuring the world. Then we develop some premises about those facts, which lead to conclusions. So we have facts, premises, and conclusions. Facts are that we see men, and that men live and die. A premise would be that all men are mortal. Another premise would be Socrates is a man. The conclusion is Socrates is mortal. You see how that follows? You can have logic that isn't true. You could say something that doesn't logically make sense. For example, you could say that all men are immortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is immortal. Logically, that follows, but the initial fact is wrong, right? So all men are not mortal. We've never met a mortal man. So the path of wildness and the principle of reason require that we look at conclusions that are made about the world and work backwards. Look at a conclusion that someone says. Well, there's two things. One, look at the conclusions that people make, and then work ourselves backward. What is that conclusion? What premises is that conclusion based on, and what facts support those premises? And if you can't follow that back and show that everything is seaworthy, sea-tight all the way back, that the premises are accurate, or good premises, and that the facts are true, then you have a conclusion that's not worth anything, or at least not worth very much. Probably not worth anything. Yet if you can follow it back and find that everything is true, is sound, then you've got something that may tell you about the universe, and you adopt it and move forward with that. Always holding it with holding it cautiously. making sure, always testing later. And likewise, you can do the opposite too. Look around, see facts, assemble those facts into premises and arguments, and make conclusions and predictions. So it goes both ways. This is reason. Reason is the arbiter of truth. It is what allows us to ascertain what is real and honest about the world. Finally, the last principle is the principle of virtue, which is the purpose of life. Virtue, so I'm going to click on that. Good. Virtue is the purpose of life. It is it falls like rain in the footsteps of the man or woman or child even who walk the path of wildness, and who live a life with an understanding of that we are only here temporarily, who seek after their nature and abide that, who perform works and activities and efforts towards a social end, who exercise temperance in all things, and recognize that the universe is devoid of appears to be devoid of love and compassion and sentience, so far other than what we have here, and also uses reason as the governing faculty. When you do these things, the actions, the life that you live will be a virtuous life, and you will leave the world a better place than you arrived. Thus is that is, sounds so highfalutin, that is the path of wildness, a walk of equanimity, a balanced movement through life. And that's it. Thanks for joining me in this meditation. Bye-bye.